I'm not sure what's going on here today, guys, but there's shenanigans. But welcome back to part 2 of Aquarius Rising Africa. And I'm having issues in the back of the house here because SOULutions won't go away. And I'm supposed to be on Aquarius Rising Africa, so I'm going to have to just sort that out. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem with our pictures. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Nice to see you all again. Part 2 of Double Trouble Wednesday. And yeah, we had a fantastic, deep dive into the Karoo, in South Africa, the area in which I grew up. And I am on the garden route, so lots of these shenanigans that we're talking about are actually going on right here with Jessie. Anyway, without any further ado, let's bring on the lady. Jessie.
Yes, yes. Hello, hello. Good to be back.
Back you are. I just want to quickly organize. Okay, yes. All right. No, we're just trying to organize the back of the house stuff here because I see I've come on the SOULutions channel and it's not changing to Aquarius, which is going to give us a problem. But Morna is sorting that out in the background. Carry on.
All right. Let's start with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this
Indeed.
day. We thank you that you have those behind the scenes, Lord. We thank you for Renee and for all the work he does behind the scenes to make things run smoothly and so beautifully, Lord. We ask that you would quickly get all of this figured out, and we ask that we would be able to do this show today with no more issues, no problems. We ask that you would bless our internet, our technology, our airwaves, and that of all those who are listening. In your name we pray and ask, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jessie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again, for all the wenches with wrenches and those who don't have wrenches. We love you and appreciate you and just thank you. Interesting. While we try to see what's going on here in the background, Jess, and you guys, if you have some questions, you can just keep them there in the meantime. We'll pop them up as we go along. But wow, what an interesting decode that we're having here so far. And I really hope there are a number of South Africans watching this and Africans just from all over Africa. It's not just South Africa. South Africa is pretty much the capital of the trafficking hub. And you know, when we go back and we look at what Beverly Rhodes was saying, her handler back in the 70s when she was brought here, Peter Daniel Rhodes, was the one, and he was I think sales director or something of Marley Tiles, Marley Roof Tile. It's a big company in South Africa, Marley Tile. So he came here under the guise of working for Marley Tiles, and then was commissioned to set up the main child transportation rings here under Prince Philip. Prince Philip was his handler. Wow. So Prince Philip is directly responsible for the trafficking rings set up in South Africa and Africa. And of course, now that he's not around anymore, I wonder who's got that job.
Right.
So that's what, and of course, she's mentioned the Karoo several times as part of where a lot of this goes on, and a lot of the snuff movies get made there as well. Yeah. So, you know, talking about the underground stuff that we were seeing early on, the Khoisan breeding programs for the First Nation kids take place there. Child hunting.
Yeah. All of that
there.
we're seeing.
Big hunting area.
all of that's displayed directly in their coat of arms, that that's what's going on, you know?
And isn't that amazing that what you're seeing in the coat of arms is what a lot of that she's told us through her own experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so anyone doubts this stuff. Oh, I mean, the other
Yeah.
day, my brother, and I love you dearly, buddy, but I mean, it's like the question I have, and that's actually a question I have to you, which is what I wanted to ask, and something I asked him, because we know we're not a Republic of South Africa anymore, right? Since the
Mm-hmm.
early 80s. But of course, he argued with that. So as long as you're arguing with that, we can't get further. But I said to him, go and Google it. It's right there for everyone to see. And if
Mm-hmm.
everyone, and the embassy somewhere in America, I don't even know where, it's on Google. Go and Google it. The numbers there, everything. But what I hear when I'm listening to like people have, you know, in our parliament and stuff, having discussions and often taking on these ministers who are misappropriating funds and stuff like that. I mean, it's a joke. But the lawyers or the judges or whoever it is that's questioning them will ask them the question: the Republic of South Africa
Mm.
requires this knowledge, blah, 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 blah. But if there is no Republic of South Africa, and they keep
Right.
repeating that in court, what does that mean?
Well, I think it gets into
Or
the operations, right? Which maybe that's something we'll look deeper into. Um, if not like what are their abilities if they're operating in the Republic? What do they want people to think, you know, that is operating when they say that? And then what are real operations?
yeah, exactly.
I'm taking a note.
So what does that actually mean? Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what Militia Reddy saying about 2 years ago, Prince William came to do a conversation effort at Table Mountain, conservation effort, I think is what you're saying, effort at Table Mountain Park. They are always in here. And Harry's in here saving the rhino. Meanwhile, it is well known they are big game hunters. How can you come here, save the rhino, and then you'll tell me you're killing them for conservation? I mean, it's
Yeah.
the word con in conservation is there for a reason. Let's remember that.
Right.
So, and they very much involved the rhinos, elephants, Kenya. They love Kenya. And of course, Botswana. They love Botswana as well. I mean, they all
Yeah.
over. So it's not just I mean, they will probably come here, in my opinion, under the guise of protecting the rhino. Meanwhile, it was
Right.
his great great grandfather or grandfather that started the WWF, that is literally, since the WWF has been founded, suddenly the rhino have gone extinct. Isn't that funny?
Right.
Jeez. I mean, when are we going to open our eyes? Right? So
Right.
not
And
only
I
is
would
it
propose
animals, but I
too.
do believe, hmm,
Yeah, I would propose that who
go
you
just,
probably think is not who's taken over operations. I think it's someone else um out, you know, carrying on the lineage, not I think that you just have William and Harry in the area, but I think that, you know, it's a trust position and they've shown publicly who they've given that trust to. Um, you know, which would break a lot of our hearts, I think, if we knew who had to be in charge of that now. But let's are you good if we get
well, I mean,
into finishing up
mm,
that area? We're kind of getting a little lag here.
Yeah, let me just see if we have now. Okay. Yes, 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 yes. Here we are.
All right.
Okay, the
Do the
last one was the Oathorn coat of arms.
right. So we
Let's
were
get
getting
it on
into the
here.
underground and the cave systems and the mines. Let's go ahead to the next one. We're going to start to get into, some of the questions to ask as you're looking at things is you know, who's in control? Who's running things? What are we seeing working and operating in the area? And, who are they working with? So we know that the cave systems are owned and run by the Otshorn Town Council and Municipality, so that's important. Who are they also connected to? You're going to have some of the big mine systems, some of those being the uh, Teshipi and Niddle mines. I'm not sure how to exactly say those, but it's Tshipi and then NTLE. And then who owns this was the one that stood out to me was we'll just call it Teshipi. Um, the Teshipi ones really kind of stood out to my attention. And when I started, you see their logo and their symbol way at the bottom on the left-hand side, that circle with the lines kind of in a hill formation. That same symbol we see elsewhere. We also saw kind of like those colored lines in the chevrons for um, the coat of arms that we were looking at. Um, and so I was following that, and you have, in the middle there too, you can see it a little better, the Teshipi and Nettle symbol there. And then you've got some affiliate companies as you go up. They've got the Nitsimbital and the Jupiter um, company. And then going up further, you see they've got a company with an M in there, what looks like an omega and an M. That symbol with the omega and the M being symbols also that would be seen in the Brotherhood with scarves or mantles, but they actually use that omega symbol too, with the stripes where the mantle would be over the shoulders. You see that in the symbols for the Order of the Sphinx, as well as your Order of Mongolia, those branches. So that again then connects to your Order of the Red Banner, which gets into your judges. I've done a whole decode on some of those orders. The M also we talked about going back, that connecting to your Order of Milos, which is part of under your now I'm forgetting the name of it right now offhand, but connected to kind of some of your international other areas under the Order of Milos. Um, Let me look up real quick that Order of Milos as we're looking at these, but we see then, Jupiter mines, um, their symbols there. Now, there's some differences here um, as we're looking at Jupiter. And let me just see, I'm looking up Order of Milos here too. Um, your Jupiter asset management is separate as well as your Jupiter power, but we see them kind of in the area too, but as far as I could see, there wasn't a connection between all those. But it's just curious that you have the same name because that Jupiter symbol is so important in the system, particularly around Christmas time. You get a connection, at the upper levels of the Order of Phoenix, the Order of the Golden Dawn, and the Order of Melchizedek, around December 21st, usually every year, you have planetary alignments where Saturn passes in front of Jupiter. And for them, that sign is going to represent, Satan will be represented by Saturn. That's also another name for him, as well as the number 95 that they'll use in the system. Jupiter representing the Antichrist, and representing the Antichrist giving his authority over to the beast. So it's something that they use that symbol a lot. And the Order of Milos the Great, it was Serbia, is what I was looking for. You get knight succession groups that are connected under that territory of Serbia, and some of the higher level orders for that are going to be your Order of Saint Prince Lazar, your Order of the White Eagle, and your Order of the Caradorde Star. And I'm forgetting, I think it's I'm trying to remember what the name of the initial initiation order for that is. But let me just see here if it says. I'm just blanking on it right now, but we'll get into it another time. But, so following these symbols as well as what we see, going on underground, that's what I really was looking at. What are the reported cave systems? What are the reported mines? What's the reported geography? What transportation groups? Because that's, what we see in that area are all these brotherhood in charge who are connected to your transportation orders. So that's what, we were looking at. So let's go ahead to the next one, because as we get further into it, the Jupiter connection is interesting. Nope, go ahead to that. Yeah. So we'll get further into the Jupiter connection, but look at the maps. This is the Tashipianetl manganese mining, and that top map in the left-hand corner, that follows and connects with what we saw initially in the map that kind of had the points for the major mine systems, right? And we see overlap in that wherever we have those major mines, we also have this Tashipianetl mining going on. We also see the overlap over that Route 62 and the Congo caves, right? So you see them highly, all those main points and access points, we see them there. So I think that that's really important to pay attention to. And when we look up at the smaller map that's in blue, we see a couple really highlighted areas, one in red and one in gold. That red one being very prominent, that's a high area for them where they're working out of. But look at the massive, that red kind of highlighting a deep, deep underground. And that just being kind of north of where you have the Outshorn area. So that, Outshorn, I think, just sits just right below that red area where you kind of see the two blue lines connecting at a upside down V, and then getting into that area up there, or just south of that V, but so when we're overlapping areas, we see that really that Outshorn area, we see a lot of connections, a lot of access points, because we know that mines have access points into the underground, into the cave systems. So I, I'm seeing this area really has a lot of, territory. It's not like they just have one mine. They really have their fingers in everything in that, southern tip there. And their symbol, it looks like, when you look at that, it looks like a hole with, those same talons or lines that we saw. And we'll see where else we see them. But, when we think about the crest, you have those talons going up the sides. Um, and we see kind of that same imagery here where it could look like a gold wing and a white wing overlapping over an abyss or an eye of Horus. Um, but that symbol's going to go to some other things internationally as well. So that's part of what I believe is the interconnection. So let's go forward a little bit here. One more slide. So when we dig even deeper into this.
By the way, you said, Jessie, sorry, I want to just tell you the pronunciation is Chipi and Claire. Chipi and Claire mine. That's how you pronounce that. Chipi and Claire.
And Slea. I can't.
Claire.
I'll let you pronounce it. I'll just call it TP. So, so when we look further into this, I just want to kind of show how sometimes in the system, they're going to overlap things. We saw the symbol for the mines that had kind of like those wing type shapes, or we could also call it the laurel type shapes. In the system, it's known as the C's, not like the letter C, but the SEE is how they'll spell it. And you get a connection with that to your Holy See under the Babylon side, who had major authority and jurisdiction. You get a connection to your Mother See, which was the Apostolic Armenian Church that we had looked at in our show on the Kardashians. And the C's connect to the governance of the councils of the system. You're going to have your general UN being a big chunk of that. And notice also, anything that's connected to the councils is going to have that C-like formation or the crescent moon image. And depending on which council they're connected to, you'll see that crescent moon facing different directions. So we see it even, that crescent moon shape, in the Clinton Foundation symbol, which we see in the bottom right there. You also, if you see like almost that C or circle formation, which with a whole bunch of stars, that's another way they display the connection to the councils or governance under the councils or one of the council's programs or affiliates. So we see, we know Bill and Hillary were in this area. We know they have a direct connection to the councils. We see the alliances, especially with leaders like Mandela. It's like you see Bill Clinton highly involved in that situation, displaying, their brotherhood connection. Even, I look at that top picture, how strategic was that you have the brotherhood handshake, literally displayed in that. You see then in that bottom one, Bill wearing specific colors, that are going to represent South Africa, the gold and the green, and with the symbology of the Clinton Foundation behind it, that being a lot of the big financial backer in both, the trafficking through those areas, as well as, investing in the territories, overseeing, running those. And we talked about last time the connection then further with the trafficking, where then you have the cover for it, where they've brought Chelsea in. What is she connected to? You have her being directly involved in the board and the oversight for Thorn, which is supposed to be an anti-trafficking organization, where literally they're trafficking and they're running the anti-trafficking organizations at the same time. They're masters at creating double emoluments. A double emolument is, basically when they put themselves in a position of two roles with that, you know, what it does is it gives them the ability to commit the crimes, but also to be involved in the oversight so they're able to cover up the crimes that they commit. Because there isn't any governing oversight, they're basically overseeing themselves. They don't have a third party check or anybody, looking into what they're doing. So, let's look at the Clintons and the mining shenanigans. Um, the big thing, go ahead to the next one. The big thing behind this, as we look at that, is you do have, it doesn't show a direct connection to the Clintons and the mines there in South Africa. But let's think about what we know. Um, we know that, those caverns, especially the Congo ones, they sit on a bedrock of uranium. That is one of the biggest resources that's there. Of course, they're going to say all the mines are there mining other things, but what is uranium used in? It's used in nuclear energy. It's, going to be used as a structure support um, for elements like lithium. So it's more like so it's interesting when you look at the uranium group, um, that uranium is going to encase other things that are very interactive. But you see the uranium molecule there in the middle. Um, and they, use that symbology for that. We know that there's a connection between the Clintons and companies that primarily stem from their post-presidency work with the Clinton Foundation. Um, and we know that that connects back through the Canadian firm Uranium One, which is what we see the symbols there, um, which merged with a South African entity after receiving significant donations from the Clinton Foundation. So they hid the Clinton name, and you have Uranium One kind of doing all the investing and kind of being the face front company. And they made deals and connections going back to 2007, where you have the merger with the Canadian company um, with the South African companies. And they did that through donations. And there's also a direct connection with that to Russia as well. So some of that follows back to that. And what are they investing in? It's basically the weaponization of children. When you see nuclear, it's not just about a nuclear weapon. Like when we think of a nuclear weapon, we think of a missile that type weaponry that can be fired and cause a mass amount of damage, kind of like your bomb that hit Hiroshima. But that's not the bulk of their nuclear program. When you really get into the nuclear programs, it involves children, it involves spiritual gates, it involves the, you know, mass amounts of energy. And that's what they're doing, the weaponizing of children. Um, with this,
A
getting
couple
back,
of years back,
go ahead.
can I just,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, carry on. Sorry, there's a definite lag here. Carry on. I'll ask you afterwards.
Okay. So going back, Jupiter power that we had seen, there's a direct connection between Jupiter power and BlackRock. And BlackRock has a huge presence in South Africa. Jupiter Power is a US-based company that basically creates batteries or energy. They're an energy storage developer. We know that Blackstone has the Black Rhino Group, and that Black Rhino Group being connected to Jupiter Asset Management. So those are some of the, connections with that. Go ahead to the next one.
I think that's all, Jess. I do believe
That
that's the
was it.
last one we
All
have.
right. So,
Yep.
this is the backstory, some of the back connections. When we're looking, we got to think, you know, what are they utilizing? What is the underground? What do they have under there? And what are they doing to the children under there? And, we see mass amounts of money being funneled. We see mass amounts of resources being funneled. We know that those resources are used, for multiple things, including nuclear energy. And, um, that's why we see not just the Clintons, but you have, the Clintons Foundation being connected to BlackRock, BlackRock being connected to, the elite sovereign military and Galactic Federation, BlackRock being connected to the ports, being connected to transportation. Um, the symbol that we saw for the mine, go back to my train episodes because we see that same symbol, the circle with the lines looking like hills or valleys, being used in some of the trainmen symbols. Um, and that connecting to your Ferromax, your Grupa, Mexico train lines. In my train episode, you'll see those symbols, and um, you'll see that, you know, it's all about the transportation of their underground human marketing, human trafficking. Um, so it's all very interconnected. And the sad truth, when we put it into simple words, it is my full belief that, our former president, Bill Clinton, our former, Secretary of um, State and presidential candidate, Hillary Rodham Clinton, who was supposed to become, president instead of DJT, but, you know, why should they get pardons? Who gave them a pardon? Hell, they should be held accountable because they have engaged in crimes against humanity at an international scale. It's not just children that I witness them doing things to in rituals in the United States, horrific things that are outlined in my affidavits on timothycharleshomeseth.com. But, um, you know, they've continued to develop, they've continued to expand, they've continued so they could commit more crimes that, I mean, if we knew the numbers, it would be so hard to grasp and fathom that they could do such a thing. This is bigger than Hitler. um, it is far bigger than Hitler and the devastation that was caused there. we're talking more, more mass numbers of children that they are accountable for, um, that they have massacred and committed crimes against.
It's, I mean, I think if we had to magically get the entire number of kids that have been destroyed by Luciferians on the planet, I think we'd be extremely, extremely sad. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because I think it's almost like infinite already. I mean, if we're just talking, when we were chatting about Montauk the other day, what you were saying is just through Montauk alone, 5 million kids. And on average, 1% survive. What?
Right? That's
1%
what Timothy had reported
of
on
these,
TimothyCharlesHomesstuff.com.
1 to
Yeah.
2% of these kids that go through these, yeah, sorry, I was gone and then back. But, you know, most of them don't survive. They get exterminated and discarded like vermin.
Right?
It'll
The
forever be
hierarchy
a mystery to
children,
me, that's for sure.
in every situation, you have the hierarchy children that they're training in their circle groups to continue the evil. Those children survive, but how many expendable children? Both children are tortured horrifically, and forced to participate in this brotherhood and sovereign military order. Um, you know, and they should be held accountable for both. They should be held accountable for the crimes they committed against, children, whether their own or, whether other hierarchy children in their area, as well as the crimes for the expendable.
And also, and they should be committed. They should be the crimes that they force children to commit against other children, because
Right?
hey, as a normal kid, you're gonna have your squabbles in the playground, and you're gonna pull in each other's hair and punch each other's like I don't know, like boys and girls do in a normal situation. Of course, as kids,
Yeah.
you get aggravated, but never would you, in a normal circumstance, want to sacrifice another child or a baby. Good God, a
Right?
child sacrificing a baby. I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine what that child must be going through? I mean, I know you've come close with
Yeah, I
with
know
the. I know you told us before.
yeah, I mean, I experienced witnessing other children being forced to do that, even, being put into the situation where, it's like your natural instinct is to save and to protect, to guard those that are littler than you. Even when I've talked about, I call them little brown eyes, but, it's like we had a 1-year-old that, they would have us at the hunting lodges, and, me and my training partner would hide that 1-year-old so that they couldn't sexually abuse him. He was a hierarchy child. Um, other younger kids, like we went to all extents to try to save those kids, even at the expense of our own injury and harm and torture. It's like we did it over and over and over again. How many times I've talked about, Colonel Michael Aquino with some of the things
Yeah.
at the military bases. In one of my affidavits, I get into, when they do the farm days and bringing in the bestiality with the younger kids. But it was like those situations, they would just keep bringing the toddlers in, and every round it was like you'd go through rounds. You tried to save, and then they'd kill them all, and then they'd bring in the next round, and it would be the same thing. How many rounds do you have to go through before you finally just allow the kids to die? No child should be put in that situation. It's not your natural instinct. Even, you know, they push you to that brink of just of surrender and giving up because you realize that they won't stop, that they will continue to keep going, and it gets worse and worse every round. It's not like they do the exact same thing. Like they increase the torture, the pain, the suffering, and it gets to the point as a child where you just can't bear it. You can't bear to watch it. The things that they're doing to kids or the things that they're making other kids do to kids, you can't bear it. And you cry out and just, you know, I mean, everybody's screaming, stop, stop, don't do it. You know, like you're doing everything within your power and your means to stop it, and they just don't stop. Um, you know, and it creates an anger and a violence where even the kids in the circle groups, you know, get violent with those who are adults. And really it stimulated where, you know, many began to plot the demise, you know, because that would be the only way to stop it from happening to the kids is to take out, you know, the adults. Um, but the difficulty is you're not just dealing with one or two people, you're dealing with circle groups, you're dealing with, you know, high level witches and warlocks that have, you know, demonic alliances. So, you know, they make it very difficult for you um, to be able to secure any justice or to have any control in the situation. You're never just battling one person. You know, they come with hordes and legions of demons, as well as hordes and legions and alliances that are massive worldwide. You know, if you're out of compliance, if you do something you shouldn't, now you are, you know, you are a target for every single brotherhood circle group that that individual you went after has alliances with. And you better believe you're going to feel it. You're going to go to school and they're going to all sit there and stare at you. You're going to go to church and they're all going to sit there and stare at you because you have committed, in their eyes, you've committed an immortal sin, and once you're out of compliance, no matter how hard you work at it, you will never get back to where you were. You will be shunned. You know, they will withhold things. You will go to your family events and everybody will shun you and leave you out, but you're required to be there. It's a very lonely place, you know, because you don't get the fellowship because you're out of the circles. Um, Yet, if you don't attend, it's going to be worse. Now they're going to show up in your yard in the middle of the night and, you know, kill people in your family in front of your face. So, you know, it's a lot as a child to bear, and no child should have to bear that. Hope you have to unmute, Shanti.
I can't imagine what must be going through a child's mind, and absolutely, you know. And then, really, you know, when we look at some of our leaders in this day and age, are we surprised that they've turned out the way they have when that has been their initiation into life? You know, that's all they know. And of course, they are so mind controlled and so programmed that you're not even dealing with the real person anymore, the real spirit of that being. It's now kind of like being operated by who knows what all and how many hitchhikers are hitching a ride on that body. So, I mean, it's
Well,
the
you also
children,
have
you
the
know. I
drug
mean, when you talk
element.
about,
I was going to say you
yeah,
have the drug of adreno element too, where, you know, these people survive off of functioning adreno on a regular basis, but when you are least expecting it, they're going to take their psychosis amount, and then there is no controlling those people. Really, it is dealing with the demonic and dealing with someone who is a beast. You know, they're an utter beast when it's like that's where you get kind of like your alpha omega trained soldiers, where your super soldiers, these people they have an objective. There's no stopping them unless they're taken out. But you hear stories where how many bullets did it take to take out you know some of these super soldiers, to what extents had to be done to get them to stop and turn off. you know their abilities are superhuman in that aspect, which is, it's scary when people are in that state. The majority of average people don't know how to deal with that, and that's a lot of times the children find themselves in that same position in the hierarchy as they're going through training. They don't know how to, you know, navigate the situation. They're just in survival mode trying to survive through at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Are you there? Sorry, I've definitely got a lag.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask you about just backtracking a little bit to the Karoo again, because a few years ago there was a big thing about fracking. You know fracking, right? So they
Yeah.
were doing and threatening to do a lot of fracking in the Karoo. Um, there was a huge uproar from the public about that, so they put that on hold for a while. But I think they've either started doing it or their intention is to do it. What do you think purpose the real purpose of fracking is? Why would they do that? Is there any relevance to trafficking? I mean, obviously they would want to make money. There's always the money element, right? But is there anything else around fracking that they would be so
I
insistent on doing in the
I
Karoo?
believe so, and my easiest my easiest way to explain it is to look at processes and functions. Um, when we think about fracking, what are they doing? They're building pipelines under the ground. They're claiming that those pipelines are, meant for oil or for gas or other things that they're collecting, right? Resources that are underground. Um, but when we put it into like examples, right? Where do we see common processes executed? Your Catholic churches, your monasteries, many of them have underground piping systems that were used for heating, right? So there you have an energy source, right? Um, is it a way for them to have a form of, where they're running pipelines, but really there's an energy coming off of that that they can access above ground? When you think about it, most of your priests in the older days would walk around barefoot. That's why they had the heated floors, right? So, what are they doing with the energy collection? I think it's massive ways that they can collect energy. The other thing with that is when you think about it, um, you have different areas that are pressurized by rock. Um, in the days of Noah, you had a mass flood. Because it happened so quickly, you got, you know, remains that were basically crushed and pressurized. and that's where you get oil from. Um, is there a DNA component to oil from those pressurized remains? Is there something more nefarious than going back to biblical times? Like that's what they want us to believe, is that that pressurized oil is all from biblical times. But is there more? Like, are those well springs of oil, pressurized areas connected to some of their mass grave sites? Is it a way for them to basically do their Soylent Green programs and, have the remains of people that they're using in energy, and, it's all part of their profit tier? So, I think that there is much more nefarious things that happens with that, um, and gets into their profiteers, their destruction of real people and lives, their covering up of their criminal activity. And, you know, why are they fighting for it? Because it's all about the sacrifice. They want access to it. Um, every every brotherhood country wants access to the pipelines. Oh, you have to unmute.
So, are you saying that the fracking and obviously the underground area uh, could possibly be a burial site of sorts? So they would be fracking there and gathering DNA through the fracking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they create underground areas. You get massive underground cities where people are being funneled through. Then, they're going to have hierarchy children do battles. Cities will utterly be destroyed. And what do they do? Because you're working with mass amounts of energy, there's a huge pressurization that occurs in those situations. um, now they've got resources, and they need a way to funnel those resources that isn't going to be questioned. Um, it's the easiest way to do it.
That's, that's so wild. I mean, that is so wild. How does one even contemplate that? Who thinks about this evil? Seriously, there's like nothing that is sacred for
They live
these
through it.
guys. That is,
I mean, they're dealing with demonic generals. They live through it and find a way to capitalize on it.
yeah, absolutely. Sure. Okay. Well, I've just got a couple of questions just that I've picked up here in the meantime. So let me just see here. Interesting. I just questioned Joey. Are there any thoughts on the ice cream trucks on the East Coast only showing up after 9 p.m.? I've seen videos of that. What is that?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
a whole
there's
lot of them,
again,
and all at the
it
same
can,
service station. Sorry.
no, it's okay. It can be a lot of different things. Um, there is a direct connection, and not all ice cream trucks, not all ice cream companies, but the system has so many ways of doing the evil that they do. Um, you know, that includes your ice creams under your milk contracts in the system. The milk contracts, they're going to basically, it's like your spirit cooking. Um, they're going to have, the young in the mother's milk, but they do stuff to the milk. Maybe I'll just put it that way. They do stuff to the milk, and all of that goes back to their contracts, certain contracts with Ashtaroth. And there's stuff that they do with the ice cream. I brought this out several years ago. There was a certain company that produced ice cream that you could only get online, and it was called Roe versus Wade. So you could imagine what probably was in that ice cream. But, that's one of the ways that they hide. You looked at Nancy Pelosi, when COVID hit, she wasn't worried. Why? Because and this was really what they put
I
out
was
publicly.
thinking,
She was stocked on her ice cream, right? Great, Nancy, you're going to be eating all those
yeah,
young put into ice cream. Um, they put their cannibalism right in our faces. They find creative ways to do it, and they think it's funny that they can pull the wool over our eyes. Um, and think of how her connections to Epstein Island, the different sacrifices there. What happens to all those mass amounts of children sacrificed there? Who owns the ice cream companies that they're working with, selling, profiting off of that? Um, where's all the dead bodies go? Um, a lot of it goes to our food companies, our pharmacia, so then they can sell it to us and curse us and profit in it that way too. Um, but that's what, so could it be, that they're picking up stuff, they're using the ice cream trucks to pick up people to deliver things that shouldn't be delivered. Um, you know, that probably, probably they had a secret meeting, secret delivery somewhere, transporting something. But again, it could just be, maybe you had a couple ice cream trucks randomly that they just like to have their business meetings late at night. Yeah, they're going around the streets. It sounds more like they're stalking areas, when people are going to be
well,
sleeping, casing things
they,
out. But
what I saw was a whole lot of them all gathering at one petrol station, gas station. But there was 15, 20 lot. They were like cockroaches running in and out of there. Late at night, stopping, talking to each other, driving. I don't know, And then, the comments were like, what is going on here? And the guy says, well, can't you see they're just filling up? Obviously, they come and fill up their trucks at a certain time of night. I mean, maybe,
right?
probably, but
Maybe,
is that all they're doing though? Is that,
right?
yes, they're filling up their trucks, but that's what they want us to think. But those of us with the eyes to see now we've got questions. We've got questions,
And we should
right?
ask the questions.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy. Anyway, let's see. Here's one more. Um, I like this one, Bethany. Can someone explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old? And you see, I like 5-year-olds because we just turned 5, and I like that. And you all, if you heard my show on the first 5 years, whatever, at 5 years old, for the first 5 days, I couldn't make a 5, and then suddenly I could make a 5, and then I realized it's because this channel, when I was almost 60, right? When I actually 55 when I started it, right? 55 when I started this channel, right? And now it was like spiritually, the first 5 years I knew were going to be the most difficult. And I
Yeah.
said, 10 years from now, I'll write a book of some of the stuff that happened behind the scenes of error in the first 5 years. So 5 years old is good. Um, why they harvest our energy and why? What do they use it for? Is it the energy for demonic entities? And I think, we often talk about this, but I really think it's great to actually cover a question like that every now
Yeah.
and again as well. Maybe you can
I
just
mean,
cover
the
that all as
easiest way I could explain it is like, when I was a kid, it didn't matter where you were, whether it was school, whether it was outside. Um, like if you shuffled your feet on the ground, you'd get a whole bunch of static electricity. And we used to do that purposely everywhere we'd go. We'd be shuffling our feet, rubbing them on the ground, collecting that energy. And then we would, like poke each other and zap each other just to make each other jump. Um, that is the natural way God created things. There is that mass amount of energy. And just by rubbing our feet, just by walking in the grass, walking in the sand, our bodies were meant to, um, soak in that energy. That energy is part of life, it's part of the song that all creation sings. It's part of our connection to God, to His Holy Spirit. And if you notice over the past few years, um, all of a sudden it's like you don't get that. You can go to the grocery store, grab a cart, and you're walking around, and you rarely get that electricity going on anymore. Why? Because they've rerouted stuff so that they can have that energy. Why? So that they can engage in their magic battles, that they want health, they want life, they want wellness, and that's what they're going to use all that energy for, and they're going to strip us of it and keep us from having it. Notice how shoes, even the soles on shoes have gone from leather to plastic. Plastic doesn't conduct the same as leather did. Leather was like skin, right? And your skin is made to absorb that energy. Why did they change shoes from having leather bottoms to plastic? It's so you're not collecting the energy. It's not conductive. Um, it's a way of protecting yourself from um, you know, having energy. So they shifted all our shoes, and notice how the plastic soles keep getting thicker and thicker. They keep putting your feet farther and farther away from the energy source, the natural energy source. No wonder people are having trouble with healing and being sick all the time. It's because you're not having that renewable energy that your body was meant to work with, that's part of that restoring of your strength, your vitality. They've stolen it from us and from our children.
well. I think that's why it's so important to walk around barefoot outside. People say, when I say walk around barefoot, they think, oh, well, you're such a hippie. I'm like, no, nothing hippie about walking around barefoot. This is exactly why you connect. You have
Uh,
that direct connection to
and
nature.
your
It's
priestesses,
something.
they'll do it at night, like they'll go gather energy during the moon. They'll be out there at night on hills gathering moon energy. They'll do it at the beaches during the high moons and stuff. You'll see, like, they'll leave flowers usually scattered along the beaches to show they were there collecting energy. Yeah.
Yep, they like to do that. Okay. Oh yeah, that's just something. Sorry, else. Reminds me of the Vril eye parasite. Is that real? The Vril. What's your take on that, Jess? We've spoken about the Vril, I think, with the book, the Black Eye Club, which I think is what Joe is referring to. So, what's your take on the
Yeah,
Vril
I
and
don't
the eye parasite?
my experience with the Black Eye Club wasn't necessarily with frills. Um, do they have things like that where they put mechanisms or um, things behind the eye? Absolutely. That's some of the programs they would do. But in my experience with, the black eyes, that comes with an oath that they take in your Masonic ritual for that, they have an easel, they have a book that they put, open up. You're going to also have the male compass on that and 3 candles, but they have to literally put their left eye on the book as they swear their oath that if they reveal any of the secrets, it will come at the cost of their left eye. And, you know, is there a demonic component to that? Absolutely. That's how they get the black eye, because, they're going to have a spirit that is involved in that oath that's going to do stuff to them while they take that oath that, is that sign that they're in. It's like a covenant. I don't know how else to put it. The black eye is part of the covenant. It's a blood covenant with that spirit when they take that oath. So I didn't see it those times when those, oaths were taken. I didn't see vrills or other things being placed in the eye. I'm not saying that, that may not be experiences for others or other circle groups, but that was not what I witnessed in that. But
Interesting, again, the left eye.
right.
I know there's always a significance to the left and the right. Do you want to just share what the left eye is? The left eye.
Well, going back to seeing into visions and, for them, you get that connection into the spirit world. And, you get two kind of roads or paths, your left hand path, which is going to lead to the dark side, your right hand path, which is going to lead to the light side. The first thing, if you break your vow, they're going to take away from you is your connection to the dark side. So that's why the left eye is hit. But there's more deeper things to it than that, but that's the basics of it.
Well, I think we have got shows for the next 15 years, guys. So book your calendars for the next Wednesday, for Wednesdays for the next 15 years. Because we're still going to be doing shows, even though we might be like flying on beautiful spaceships, because the Pleiadians are coming to fetch us, right?
You're like, I was just imagining the Starship Communications Chanti. Jessie from.
and then
I'll have to
and
make
then
it
we'll be
good.
over the, and then we'll be circling over the areas that happened, and you'll be going, "That's where that happened. That's where that happened."
Right? The intergalactic experience.
The mothership is being captained by Jessie.
Right? Be the
I love
one
it.
that's like bloop, 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 bloop. That would be the sound of my starship. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Exactly, exactly. Oh my goodness. Oh, Jessie, thank you so much for another great afternoon spent with you and with everybody in our chats. You guys are just cooler than cucumber, man. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I really like my Wednesdays. Jessie, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank
Is
you.
there anything, is there anything you want to say just in closing? Or,
Yeah.
hmm,
I'll share one more time. I shared earlier this morning. I have some great events, workshops, and opportunities coming up next month and in November that you can find on my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com. The first one being October 2nd, Thursday evening, which is the third workshop in the Architecture and Altar series. The first two should shortly be up on the website if you've missed those, but if you would like to come to the live for the third, I encourage you to get registered for that. That will be on October 2nd. Then for the other Thursdays in October, those evenings we have my next workshop called Lord Make Us One. That's going to be an interactive workshop based on, teaching right covenant relationships. How should we be interacting and living with one another? How can we mature our relationships? And I have a commercial up on the website that really shares what we'll get into with that workshop. So I encourage you to watch that. And then the third thing is save the date, November 7th and 8th. I'll be doing a live event, a Christmas extravaganza, good old fashioned Christmas extravaganza in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So lots of opportunities for you all to get involved and come and just enjoy being together, enjoy learning together and maturing together. That's a good way to put it. So I'll
Well, I
go
think
ahead and.